There is a specific kind of silence that fills a room when 22 people are cheering and none of them are cheering for you. It's not really silence. It's the loudest thing you've ever heard. My name is Calvin Holloway, 35 years old. I work as a program coordinator at Crestwood Community Health, a mid-sized nonprofit in Charlotte, North Carolina that connects uninsured families to medical resources. My salary is $38,000 a year. I live in a one-bedroom apartment off Albemarle Road, 20 minutes from my parents' house, which I am invited to approximately 4 times a year. Holidays and the occasional Sunday dinner when my mother needs a number at the table. My brother's name is Ryan, 38 years old. He is the VP of Operations at Holloway Home Medical, the supply company my father built in 1999 from a single warehouse on the east side of Charlotte. Ryan makes more money than I will ever see in a decade. He has a wife named Pam, 2 kids, a house in Ballantyne, and my mother's full, undivided, inexhaustible attention. When Ryan joined the company in 2016, my mother said, "Finally, someone who understands what it means to protect what your father built." I had just finished my master's in public health at UNC Charlotte. Nobody asked if I wanted to interview. I stopped attending most family events in 2022. Not out of bitterness, out of self-preservation. You can only sit at the periphery of your own family for so long before the distance starts to feel like a mercy rather than a wound. But on a Thursday evening in late July, someone still had my number. My father, Gene Holloway, collapsed at Holloway Home Medical's 26th anniversary gala. 200 people, black tie, speeches about legacy and growth and family values. I was not invited. I found out about the gala from a LinkedIn post Ryan made that morning. The kind of post full of phrases like building on what Dad started and honoring the journey. I read it eating a sandwich at my desk. At 9:52 p.m., my cousin Brett texted me. "Your dad collapsed at the gala. They're taking him to Atrium Health Presbyterian. Thought you should know." I changed clothes and drove to the hospital. I arrived at 10:34. My mother, Donna, and Ryan were already in the ER waiting room, heads together, talking quietly. When my mother looked up and saw me, her face registered something that was not relief. I walked over anyway. "How is he?" "They're running tests." Flat tone. "His kidneys." "We're waiting on the nephrologist." Ryan barely looked up from his phone. I sat 3 chairs away. 40 minutes later, the nephrologist, Dr. Marcus Teal, came out and spoke to my mother. I positioned myself close enough to hear, "Stage 4 kidney failure, transplant needed within 6 to 8 weeks or lifelong dialysis. Living donor ideal if a family match could be found." My mother glanced at Ryan. "We'll do whatever it takes." I noticed. She said we. I noticed I was not included in it. Just after midnight, they let us see him briefly, 2 at a time. My mother and Ryan went in together. I waited in the hallway. When they came out, my mother said, without looking at me, "You can go in if you want. Don't tire him out." I pushed open the door. My father was hooked to monitors, IV lines, a nasal cannula. His skin was the color of old concrete. When he saw me standing in the doorway, his eyes filled. "Calvin." His voice was thin. "I thought you might not come." I pulled a chair to his bedside. "Of course I came, Dad. Your mother said—" He stopped. Started again. "She said you don't really stay involved with family things anymore." There it was. All those years of distance, and she'd found a way to use them. She hadn't told him I was excluded. She'd told him I had chosen to leave. "I'm here," I said. "I'm not going anywhere." He squeezed my hand. His grip was weaker than I remembered. "They say I need a kidney. I don't want to ask you boys to." "I'll get tested tomorrow," I said. "First thing." "You don't have to." "I know," I said. "I want to." As I left the room, I passed my mother and Ryan in the corridor. I heard my mother say, quietly to Ryan, "He'll probably test and then back out. You know how he is." I kept walking. My hands were in my pockets. I did not let them see what my face was doing. The next morning, I called the transplant coordinator at Atrium Health Presbyterian. "My name is Calvin Holloway. My father, Gene Holloway, was admitted last night with kidney failure. I want to be tested as a living donor. At 2, I'll be there." I didn't tell my mother. I didn't tell Ryan. I went alone, answered every question honestly, gave blood, and went back to work. On July 29th, 6 days later, I got the call in my car in a parking garage on East Trade Street. Mr. Holloway, you're a compatible match, blood type O positive, tissue compatibility 96%. Your kidney function is excellent. You're an ideal candidate for living donation. I sat in that car for a long time, not celebrating, just sitting with it. Ideal candidate. 2 words that meant I was about to do something irreversible for a man who had let my mother erase me for 35 years. I called my father directly. Dad, I got the results. I'm a match. I want to donate. A long silence. Then his voice cracked. Calvin, you don't have to do this. I know. I want to. Another silence. Your mother's going to have opinions. Let her. 2 days later, my mother called a family meeting at the house in Dilworth. My father, my mother, Ryan, and me, around the kitchen table where we'd had 1,000 meals and I had felt invisible at most of them. My mother opened with, "We need to discuss Kenneth's genes transplant options." "I'm a compatible donor," I said. 96% match. I'm willing to donate. The room went very quiet. My mother stared at me. "You tested without telling anyone?" I wanted to be sure before I said anything. Ryan leaned back in his chair. I was going to get tested this week. He hadn't scheduled anything. I knew because I'd talked to the coordinator. No other family members had called. My mother turned to my father. "Gene, do you want Calvin to do this?" My father looked at the table, then at me. "If he's willing and he's the best match, I don't want to wait for a cadaver. The national list is 2 years minimum. We could find another donor, a family friend, a colleague, someone who isn't." "Someone who isn't what?" I asked. She looked at me. "Someone who hasn't always struggled with follow-through." I drove home without another word. But my father called me that night. "Calvin, if you're sure, then let's do it. I trust you." 3 days later, Ryan called me. "Hey, listen, since you're doing the donation, I want to contribute. I'm thinking a fundraiser, kidney disease awareness, company sponsors, local news coverage maybe, turn this into something positive." I felt something shift in my chest that I didn't like. Will the fundraiser mention that I'm donating? Of course, it's a family story. But the way he said family story already told me whose name was going to be at the center of it. A week later, I Googled Ryan Holloway fundraiser. I found the event listing within 30 seconds. Ryan Holloway Kidney Health Initiative, supporting the Holloway family. My name appeared nowhere. I didn't know it yet, but that fundraiser was the first move in something much bigger than a charity gala, and my father's napkin was coming. The surgery was on September 15th, Atrium Health Presbyterian, 7 a.m. I checked in alone. I had told my father the date. I had not told my mother or Ryan, not because I was being dramatic, but because I did not want to spend the last hour before they put me under watching my mother manage the optics of my sacrifice. My father was admitted the same morning for the recipient procedure. 2 operating rooms, 2 surgical teams, 1 kidney traveling through a brief cold journey from my body to his. The surgery took 4 hours on my end. I woke up in recovery at 1:47 p.m. with a 6-inch incision on my left side, a catheter, an IV, and the kind of pain that makes you understand immediately and permanently why people say organ donation is not a minor thing. My father came through on the other side. Kidney function restored to 68% within 48 hours. Dr. Teal called it a textbook outcome. Nobody from my family visited me in the hospital the first day. My father was in his own recovery room. My mother was with him. Ryan sent a text at 6:30 p.m. Heard it went well. Get some rest. My neighbor, a woman named Carol, brought me a change of clothes and drove me home on day 3. Carol is 61 years old and grows tomatoes on her balcony. She is a better family member than most of my actual family. Recovery took 9 weeks. I took unpaid leave from Crestwood. I spent those weeks in my apartment, moving slowly, sleeping badly, watching my bank account decrease in ways I could do the math on but couldn't stop. Medical bills, the portions insurance didn't cover, came to just over $10,000. Ryan's fundraiser raised $47,000. None of it came to me. It went to kidney disease research, and as Ryan put it in the press release, to support the Holloway family's journey. The Holloway family's journey, as if I had been a passenger. The recovery dinner was on November 23rd. My mother's idea. Celebrate Jean's recovery. Bring the extended family together. Give thanks. The house in Dilworth. The big dining room. The good china, the kind of evening that looks from the outside like a warm and functional family being exactly that. 22 relatives. Aunts, uncles, cousins. My father's 2 surviving siblings. Long table, candles, a catered spread from a restaurant on Providence Road my mother liked. I sat near the far end, between my cousin Brett and an aunt I hadn't spoken to in 3 years. My incision was 9 weeks old. Still tender in the cold. Still occasionally waking me up at night. Still mine in the way that something you can't take back is always yours. My father sat at the head of the table. He looked better than he had in years. Color in his face, steadier in his movements. A version of himself that the kidney failure had been slowly erasing. Seeing him like that was the thing I held on to. That part was real. That part was worth it. My mother stood up at 7:45 with a glass of wine, and the table went quiet. I want to say something, she said, about the person who made all of this possible. Here it comes, I thought. To Ryan. She turned toward him, beaming. My incredible son. The one who saw what his father needed and stepped up. Who organized a fundraiser that brought this whole community together. Who showed what it means to protect this family. 22 people lifted their glasses. 22 people cheered. I sat at the far end of the table with a 9-week-old scar on my side, and an empty bank account, and a body that would spend the rest of its life functioning on 1 kidney. And not one person looked at me. Ryan smiled and nodded, and said something about family. Pam squeezed his arm. I put my fork down. I looked at my plate. I breathed through my nose, slow and even, the way you breathe when you are making a decision about what kind of person you are going to be in the next 30 seconds. I was about to stand up. I felt a hand close around my wrist. My father, beside me, not at the head of the table. He had moved at some point during the toast, quietly, without anyone noticing. His eyes were wet, not the polite, social kind of wet, the real kind, the kind that comes from somewhere a man doesn't usually let you see. He reached into the breast pocket of his jacket and slid a folded napkin across the table toward me. I looked at him. He nodded once. I unfolded it. We received a report from the transplant team. The hospital social worker flagged the family dynamic before the surgery. It's in your medical file. I've had Drew Peterson, my attorney, reviewing the company's ownership structure since August. You are the only one of my children who never asked me for anything. That ends now. Don't stand up tonight. Let me handle this my way. I read it twice. Then I folded it and put it in my pocket. My father was back at the head of the table before anyone noticed he had moved. I didn't know it yet, but Drew Peterson had been busy for 3 months, and what was in those documents was going to change everything. If you've been listening for a while and want accounts like this to keep coming, it really helps if you hit that like button and subscribe. 97% of people never do, but it's what keeps this whole thing running. So, thank you. Drew Peterson was my father's attorney of 12 years. Corporate law, estate planning, business structure. He had an office on South Tryon Street in Uptown Charlotte, and the particular efficiency of a man who charges by the hour and respects his clients enough not to waste their time. My father called me on December 4th, 11 days after the dinner. Can you come to Drew's office Thursday at 10? Yes, I said. I didn't ask why. The napkin had told me enough to know that asking questions before Thursday would only make the wait harder. I arrived at Drew's office at 9:58. My father was already there. Drew had a conference table laid out with 3 folders, a legal pad and the expression of a man who had rehearsed this meeting and was ready to deliver it cleanly. Drew opened his folder. Calvin, your father has been reviewing the ownership and succession structure of Holloway Home Medical since August. In light of several things that came to his attention, including documentation from the hospital's transplant social worker regarding family dynamics prior to your surgery, he has decided to make changes. Your father currently holds 100% of the company's voting shares. He is restructuring the ownership. 49% will transfer to you, effective January 1st. Your father retains 49%. The remaining 2% goes to a management trust administered by Drew's firm. I looked at my father. He was looking at the table. Ryan's position as VP of Operations is being eliminated. Drew continued. The company will bring in an external operations director. Your father has asked if you would consider joining the board as chair. Why? I said. Not to Drew, to my father. My father looked up. Because you're the one who showed up. Not just in September. Your whole life. Calvin, you showed up for this family and we made you invisible for it. I'm not fixing 35 years with a board seat. I know that. But I'm not leaving things the way they are either. I sat with that for a moment. What does Mom know? She'll be informed this week. Drew said. The restructuring is within your father's sole authority as majority shareholder. It doesn't require her consent. My father said quietly. She tried to talk me out of the donation, Calvin, in August. She called Dr. Teal's office and told them there was a family concern about the donor's psychological stability. She tried to get them to delay the process. I went very still. She tried to stop it? Yes. While I was already in pre-op evaluation. Yes. The room was quiet for a moment. Outside, South Tryon Street did what it always did, moved, indifferent, to another Charlotte morning. The hospital social worker flagged it. Drew said, the report was added to your donor file. It noted that the donor appeared psychologically sound, but that a family member had attempted to influence the medical team inappropriately. Amy, the social worker who had paused when she asked if I felt seen by my family. She had been watching. She had been paying attention. She had done her job. Okay, I said. Drew raised an eyebrow. Okay? Let's do it, I said. January 1st. Ryan found out on December 9th. My mother had called him the moment my father told her. Ryan arrived at my apartment at 7 p.m. without calling first. He knocked 4 times fast, the way he always knocked when he was performing urgency. I opened the door. He looked at me with the expression of a man who had just discovered that the floor he'd been standing on was not as solid as he'd assumed. Is it true? He said. Come in, or don't, I said. Your choice. He came in. He stood in my living room, looking at my furniture, my bookshelves, the stack of medical bills on the counter I hadn't filed yet, with the expression of a man seeing a room for the first time after assuming for years he already knew what was in it. The fundraiser, he started, raised $47,000, I said, none of which came to me, 10,000 of which I would have liked to have had for medical bills, but go ahead. He sat down on the couch without being invited. Mom told me what to do with the money. She said the narrative needed to be about the family's response to the crisis, not about you. I know. I should have pushed back. Yes. I didn't because I never pushed back on her. I never have. He ran his hand through his hair. That's not an excuse. I know it's not an excuse. It's not, I said. I'm sorry, Calvin. And here is the thing about Ryan. I believed him. Not completely. Not in a way that erased 9 weeks of recovery on my own and a toast I will hear in my head for the rest of my life. But genuinely, Ryan had spent his whole life being the one my mother pointed at and said, this one. That had its own costs I had never thought to account for. You're still losing the VP position, I said. That's not mine to undo. I know. A pause. What are you going to do with the board seat? Build something, I said, starting with making sure the company takes care of people like me. He looked at me for a moment. Then he stood up. You were always the one who should have been there, he said. I knew that. I just didn't say it. No, I said. You didn't. He left. I closed the door. I leaned against it for a moment. Then I went back to what I was doing. On January 15th, the restructuring was finalized. Holloway Home Medical brought in Sandra Briggs as External Operations Director. 51, former director at McKesson's Southeast Division, 23 years in medical supply. The board approved her unanimously. My father retained his shares. I took my 49% and the board chair position with a salary of $92,000 a year. I kept my job at Crestwood Community Health. 20 hours a week. I wasn't giving that up. The first thing I proposed to the board was the Living Donor Support Fund. Holloway Home Medical would contribute $50,000 annually to help living donors cover medical costs not addressed by insurance. The board approved it in the same meeting. The first recipient was a man named Trevor, 29 years old. He had donated a kidney to his uncle and lost his job during the 8-week recovery because his employer wouldn't hold his position. I handed him a check for $6,000 in the conference room on South Tryon Street. He looked at the check, then at me. "You did this?" "Someone should have done it for me," I said. "Now we do it for others." My mother moved to Savannah, Georgia in February. My parents filed for legal separation the same month. The divorce would finalize in a year. Per North Carolina law, my father and I have coffee every Sunday morning at a diner on Central Avenue near the hospital where all of this started. Not long visits. An hour, maybe. Enough. One Sunday in March he said, "I should have said this 35 years ago. I'm proud of you." I looked at him over my coffee cup. "You should have said it 35 years ago." He nodded. "I know. I don't forgive you yet for all of it," I said. "But I'm trying to understand it. That's where I am. That's more than I deserve. Probably." I said, "But you chose right in the end. That counts for something." Here is what I know now that I did not know before September 15th. I know that being overlooked in a family does not mean being unimportant. It means the people doing the overlooking have decided that their comfort is more valuable than your visibility. That is a choice they make about themselves, not a fact about you. I know that the body keeps score. 6 inches of scar tissue on my left side, pink and raised, aching in cold weather. I don't hide it. I used to wear shirts that covered it. Now I don't bother. It is the most honest thing about me. I know that some people, Amy the social worker, Carol my neighbor, Drew the attorney, Trevor the man I wrote the check to, show up with more loyalty than the people who share your last name. Family is the people who act like it, not the people who simply are it by default. And I know this. When a man slides a napkin across a table in the middle of the worst night of your life and writes "that ends now," he is telling you, in the only language he has left, that he finally sees you. It took 35 years. It took a kidney. It took a family dinner where 22 people cheered for the wrong name. But he saw me. I'm not invisible anymore. I drive to the Crestwood office on a Tuesday in March, just before 7 a.m. The air is cold and damp the way Charlotte gets in early spring. That particular gray that makes the skyline look like it's still deciding whether to wake up. I park. I get out. I can see my breath. My phone buzzes. A text from my father. "Coffee Sunday?" I type back. "Always." I look at my reflection in the car window. I see the shape of who I am now. Board chair. Donor. The one who showed up even when nobody was watching. The scar will always be there. But so will I. If you liked this story, join our community by hitting that like button and subscribing for more family-centered accounts like this.